Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. I'm Kevin. I will be with you for the next, well, however long it takes to go through some pictures, talk about some editing, and answer some questions. The webinar is, of course, put together by BenQ Europe, and we'll talk a little bit, just a little bit, about color calibration and monitors and stuff like that as we go through. Now, feel free to use the box on the presumably on the right-hand side. It's on the right-hand side of my screen for asking questions. And Alexandra is on the line, kind of monitoring all of that stuff, and she'll fire them through to me. We'll either answer them as we go through, or maybe we'll do them at the end. One way or the other, we'll try and get through them. So yeah, no problem. But any questions you want to ask, I will answer as many as I can, as honestly as I can. So with that in mind, I'm going to switch off my face. Nobody really wants to look at my face, and we will get started. Okay, so we are going to talk about authentic and emotion-driven documentary wedding photography. Now, the first thing that is important for me to tell you about is a very, very brief history of my journey into photography, or wedding photography, I should say. And it all started back in 2008. I've been shooting for 14 years or so. Seems incredible. Before then, at that point in time, I was never a photographer. I had no ambition to be a photographer, and I was working in IT, like many people who kind of turned to wedding photography were. And I just got basically burnt out and decided I needed to do something very different. And one day I was on the tube driving home or coming home, and picked up one of those free magazines that you get on the tubes. And it was a magazine article about weddings. Now, I'd recently been married, so I wasn't interested in weddings anymore. But so I was about to flick over, and then I just saw with the corner of my eye these beautiful black and white documentary wedding pictures in the corner. They were actually by a wonderful photographer called Jeff Askoff. And I looked at these pictures and I thought, wow, these are amazing. I'd never even thought this was a thing at weddings. So I went home to my wife and I said, you know what, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a wedding photographer, and I'm going to do it just like this. And it's going to be really easy, and it will be no problem. It's the answer to all of our problems. And of course, it isn't easy. But I did it. She did say to me that, you know, you need to buy a camera and you need to smile a bit more and be a bit less miserable. But we did it 14 years later, 75 weddings or so later. Anyway, so what drives me with photography, I think, is this element of emotion, certainly for wedding photography. And you can see that quote there. It says, photography for me is not looking, it's feeling. If you can't feel what you're looking at, then you're never going to get others to feel anything when they look at your pictures either. And that's Don McCullen, very famous, mostly kind of conflict photographer, but just generally a wonderful documentary photographer. And I think that's really important. And as it says there at the bottom, making pictures that matter, feeling first, technique second. So as we go through these images, I'm not going to be telling you exactly kind of what aperture and shutter speed and all of that kind of stuff. It's important to understand your cameras and how you use them. But actually, it's more important to get the image, I feel. So as it says there, feeling first, technique second. And to that end, actually, a lot of the images that I take these days, now that cameras are more capable, are in what you might commonly call as P mode. In the Fujifilm world, that's everything on A, which means the camera is doing all of the thinking and we're just doing the looking. So what is documentary wedding photography? Candid, reportage, photojournalism, all those three things are relevant. And to me, it's really, really important that I maintain the integrity of those terms. And to that end, what this effectively means is that it's candid. Okay, candid photography. That's usually the words that potential clients will more than likely understand. Now, candid is an adjective, so you either shoot it candidly or you don't. So to give you an example of that, if I was taking a photograph of a cup of coffee on my desk, the moment I adjust the lights or I move the coffee to make the composition a little bit better, it's actually no longer candid. And the way that manifests itself in wedding photography is that, or the way that I approach my documentary wedding photography is that I will not massage the images. I will not move things. I will move myself, of course. I will try and understand the holy trinity of light, composition, and moments. But I won't direct, I won't move or anything like that. So it's pure candid. No, just because this is the way that I do it, it does not mean it's the only way to do it. Of course, I've got very many good friends who combine beautiful editorial photography along with documentary photography. There's certainly no right way to do it, or only way to do it, I should say. But I will say you must do it in a way that you enjoy. Nobody wants to spend their Saturdays at other people's weddings without enjoying it, right? And that element there, as you can see in the bottom right-hand side, says nostalgia. So I want my clients in 40 years' time to open their wedding album and look at an image and actually remember that moment happening, rather than thinking, oh yeah, do you remember when the photographer made us do this? That's critical to me, really, really very important. And, you know, if you think back to the images of your own youth, your own childhood, your own past, you know, if I said to you now, you know, think of one image that you remember from your childhood and which is your favorite, chances are it will be, I don't know, a picture on the beach with your family, maybe a Christmas, a family holiday, something like that. It's unlikely to be a school portrait or you know, a group shot in your works office or something, you know. So it's very important to me that this idea of nostalgia is carried through. And I often say to people, including my clients, that a picture that might well be benign today may well be very, very important in the future. So that's always worth bearing in mind. Okay, so emotion. Now, emotion in wedding photography is essentially, it starts with your eyes. And as I said at the beginning, this idea of shooting in P mode, if you like, or A mode, ultimately our responsibility as a photographer is to look for the images. That's critical. If you're spending too much time worrying about changing lenses or you know, what aperture should I shoot this at, etc., then you may well miss those opportunities. And so, you know, if you take one thing away from today or this session, I hope that it's this idea that we are observers and storytellers primarily. Of course, photography is the technique, but really we're there to tell a story for our clients. And I specifically look out for these kind of very emotional, tactile moments. So, for example, we have this image here. This was a wedding in the south of France, and it was an American couple, and they brought both their families over from America and their friends. And the reason they come over to the south of France was because the grandmother, as you can see in this frame, was living in the south of France and couldn't travel. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago. Now, I overheard somebody telling the story of this. I did not know why they were in the south of France getting married. I just assumed perhaps that's what they wanted to do. So I did not know that added element of the grandmother. So armed with that new knowledge that I picked up with my ears, because you know, listening is a very important element of being a good documentary photographer too. I kept an eye out for this interaction immediately after the wedding ceremony. So as soon as the bride approaches the grandmother, I keep this in mind. I actually have the camera at my chest level at this point. It's not at my eye level. 1, 2 frames, maybe 3 maximum, and then move away. The absolute critical and most important thing to me is that these moments do not just get wiped from the face of history because of my presence. So if I'm stood there taking 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 pictures, mostly the granny will probably think, oh, the photographer's there and will maybe want to take a little bit more of a formal picture, etc. But the most crucial thing is that this interaction, the eye contact, the hands, the obvious love between the two of them, just never happen because of my presence. So it's very, very important to behave like a guest, be like a guest, get in, take the pictures, move away, rather than trying to orchestrate any of these moments. If you're trying to shoot it as pure documentary storytelling, candid photographer. So we have another image from many years ago. In fact, this is in my church, local church in Malmesbury, where I am right now. And this is Dad straight after the ceremony, you know, giving his daughter a nice big hug. And you can see the emotion on the face. You can see it. It's compositionally, it's not going to win any awards. We've got all kinds of other things going on in the corners and the edges, but actually, it's probably one of my favorite pictures. just because of that pure, raw, emotion, dad, daughter, beautiful, beautiful picture, I think. We have another one here. This was shot with point and shoot camera X100S. Again, probably 8 or 9 years ago, I think this one was. And it's another one where hearing and using my ears has allowed me to bring this picture to life. And that's essentially because the bride had said to her sister the night before, this is a Sikh wedding, probably about 5 o'clock in the morning, and they had a Hindu ceremony the day before, that, her auntie was coming over from India. She hadn't seen it for a very long time, would be there in the morning. And so keeping that in mind, I'm looking out for that particular image and just getting in close, 1 click, 2 clicks maximum, moving away and letting them have their moment together. Okay, similar image here. Now I understand there might be a little bit of a delay flicking between the images. That might be to do with the internet, but you should be catching up with me now. So we have a grandmother and being comforted a little bit, maybe comforted is the wrong word, by a bridesmaid. And what's going on in this scene is I was actually photographing the bride, who you can see in the foreground. You can see the wedding dress in the foreground. I was shooting over her shoulder, the hugs, the laughter, all of that kind of stuff. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw the grandmother, who was, getting a little bit emotional. And then the sister, who was the bridesmaid, just reaching out and kind of giving her this little gentle face touch. So, that combination of eye contact and hands, humanity touching each other, is so powerful. We use our hands for everything, for eating, for living, for scratching. Everything is used for your hands, and our eyes are used to transmit every single part of our being in terms of emotions. Our anger, our love, our affections. And if you're armed with that knowledge and you're looking for that, then you will almost definitely make more powerful, emotion-driven pictures. Okay, so this one is actually from my most recent wedding, which was a couple of weeks ago. And in this case, we have the father of the bride. The bride is sat to the father's left, to the father's right, our left, and the lady giving the father a little peck on the head there is the groom's mum. And it was a really lovely little moment, because they were neither of them had their relative partners any longer. And it was just after the speeches, and the groom's mum had just come along and, just kind of put a gentle arm around the bride's dad and said, yeah, you know what, it's been a lovely day. Okay, so one of the things that it's hard not to do, or do it myself, is to effectively take snapshots. And snapshots, or record shots is probably a better way of referring to it. So record shots I would class as essentially just kind of head and shoulder shots, candid pictures still, but head and shoulder shots of people who are at the wedding. And they're important, actually. They're still relevant. But a whole day of just head and shoulder shots of people at the wedding is not really going to tell the story of the day. Doesn't mean the pictures will be bad, but it's not necessarily going to tell the story of the day. And you can help yourself by using wider lenses, smaller cameras, all of that kind of stuff, rather than standing by a tree with perhaps a 70 to 200 mm lens and just kind of going for those very close images. Think about these elements on the right-hand side. You've got human interaction, as we talked about, humor, looking for humor throughout the day, and eye contact. It really is important. I have these things written on the inside of my camera bag, so at every wedding, I remind myself of the things that I want to look for. And there you go, feeling first, technique second. That's it's critical all the time, so critical. And I'm as guilty as everybody else. I've missed pictures because I've been chimping. I've missed pictures because I've been worrying about whether the shutter speed is fast enough. But actually, that moment that exists at the wedding is fleeting, very fleeting, and it's just about keeping your eyes open and looking for it, being an observer. And essentially, this is it. This is one of the things that I say to my clients all the time. It's just people being people. Yes, they're at a wedding, but it is just people being normal, interacting with each other. Sometimes it's the first time they've seen each other for a while, but it's really is about this observation of people. It doesn't necessarily have to be clever, but you do need to keep that in mind, that it's a for a storytelling element of things, it's very much about the people and their interactions with each other. Okay, so here's that lady again. Bless her. She was from a couple of weeks ago. Just, giving the best man a little bit of a warning before the speeches. I wasn't privy to the conversation, but I can imagine there was a few little warning words there about stories gone by and what he's allowed to say and what he's not allowed to say. It's a nice, fun, humor-setted image for the speeches ahead. Okay, so here we are, bridal prep. This is early in the morning before the wedding, of course. And as I said, remember, it's just people being people. So, just I've been photographing the bride, I think, having her hair done, makeup, dart into the kitchen, see what's going on in there. And, we've got this lovely scene here with all of the bridesmaids who are busy wrapping up the napkins, ready for the day ahead. Probably should have been done the night before, but maybe they were too busy having some Prosecco. But we have a lot of players, a lot of main characters in the wedding here. Dad's there, telling his son off for something or other, and then everybody else is there. And then you've got that lovely little baby on the corner who's just thinking, no idea what's going on, but I've got my sandwich and I'm very happy. So like I said, none of the images are clever. There's nothing clever about it. It's just about trying to understand what's going on. And critically, the light is important. And we'll get to talk about light a little bit later on. Okay, so dancing, again, from a wedding recently, just before Christmas. There's always fun elements going on. Once the speeches are done and people are relaxing and the dancing is going, then it's almost time to kind of let your hair down as a photographer as well, because that is where you can start, or I feel like I can start exploring and looking for those very, very quirky, those fun moments that people will remember for a very long time. Okay, so here. Enough said about this, I think. The vicar, Ma, and a lady. And it turns out, I didn't know this at the time, but it does turn out that the groom was the vicar's dad, and the lady is the vicar is the groom's dad, and the lady is the groom's mum. And so, yeah, a little bit of what the vicar did next, perhaps, in that image. This is one of my favorite pictures of all times. Seems a little bit irrelevant, but I was waiting for something interesting to happen in that mirror. Sadly, didn't. I'm not going to Photoshop anything in there. But I love it because this is a very typical English wedding. We've got two men who do not want to be there and two ladies who are loving it. The chaps are probably thinking, oh, we could be watching the cricket right now, and the ladies having a jolly old time. And it's a real good observation of weddings. I see it a lot, actually, and perhaps they probably did want to be there and had a lovely time, but at that point, they certainly didn't look like they were enjoying it. Cake cutting in this case. Cake's about to tumble, hands everywhere to try and stop it. Nice close-up picture. This is a really fun wedding, actually. Late at night, lots of merriment had been going on. They decided to cut the cake much later than they perhaps would have done. Yeah, really, really fun. Lots of things going on at that wedding. So this is a very different type of picture to that previous one, and perhaps. We have time for fun and humor and everything, but we also have time for, as I said right at the beginning, nostalgia. Nostalgia is super, super important. So here we've got the bride who's just the image is cropped, unfortunately, for this presentation. This is a little bit missing on the right hand side, not too much. But so the bride is, she's contemplating the day ahead. This is during bridal prep. She's getting ready in mum and dad's room. And obviously in the background we see Dad putting his shirt on. But what I love about this picture is the clutter, the stuff on the mantelpiece, the old photos on the wall, the furniture, that four-poster bed. All of these things will go away at some point. And right now, it's a couple of years old. This image, the bride will look at this picture and remember her wedding day. Give it 10, 20, 30 years time, she'll look at this picture and remember the house and the parents and the furniture and how that room was, and perhaps how she played in that room as a little girl. All of these things are going to come and be so important in the future. Okay, so let's see what happens next. There we go. This is the same bride, and I think sometimes we we get lost in this idea of trying to make clever images and a nice play on light and all of that kind of stuff. And it's important. However, the most important thing is the romance, is the love between the people and the ceremony, and that is critically what they want you to photograph. Everything else is a bonus, but it is really still important to get the beautiful, within as much reason as you possibly can, shots of the standard kind of elements of a Western wedding in the UK, at least. So the first kiss is a critical moment, and one that, if it's not out of your control, should be one that you are absolutely getting right every single time. Okay, so this is, again, I'm walking through this wedding. It's like a little mini story. So this is the confetti line. They're about to run down this aisle, get confetti thrown all over them. One of the things I love to do is put myself in their place if there's time. So I'll photograph down that line. This is what they're going to see. This is what they're seeing in a couple of moments' time. And this is a brilliant group shot. This is my idea of a perfect group shot. We've got everything going on here, lots of stuff. And in any kind of circumstance, this is the picture that your eyes will be drawn around and look at different people and all kinds of good things going on. And this is them just about to come out of where I was stood, run down that aisle, run down that confetti line. But again, the standard important stuff is very critical. Everything else is of interest. A little lad here, his dad was just throwing him up in the air. I'm not sure whether he was about to be ill or not. He was going very high up, but it's nice. It's a nice little portrait of the lad at the wedding. Okay, so remember we're talking about getting close, being kind of very much a guest at the wedding. And one of the things that I do like to do with the confetti element of things is once they've kind of running towards me, is I'll get that shot, of course, and then I'll just step into the line. I'll step into the confetti line with the guests are, and we get this lovely element in this picture with the hands over the top and the cones of confetti. Really is very much a frame filling picture that is from a guest eye point of view rather than a more traditional photographer's point of view. These interactions, this is the hugathon, as I would call it. This is the bread and butter time. Happens after every single wedding. The most important thing is to not get in the way and not make it about you. Certainly I feel this, so I'm always light allowing, always behind the bride, taking those images of people as they approach her. Yeah, it's another example of that kind of thing going on. It's the first time the bride's really going to notice you after the ceremony, so she doesn't want to see you kind of right in front of her all the time. Double hug, double bonus points for double hugs. You can get them if you try. Right down on the dance floor, here we are, kind of getting right in the mix. One of the questions from Daniel that I've just seen pop up is, do you ever use flash at all? And the answer is no, I do not use flash at all. I do, however, in this case, this is what good example in this image, I am using a very small LED light. It's a Manfrotto Lumimuse. It's the size of a matchbox. You charge it once, it lasts about 3 years, and I only use it when I need to. So I prefer not to use any artificial light at all, but sometimes you do need to use it. I just hold it in one hand, I can direct the light, and I can move the camera around with the other hand. Another really nice picture that I like from a photographer's wedding a few years back. It's that element of movement, isn't it? That great big smile on his face. How happy is he? It's beautiful. I really love it. And it's, if this was entered into a competition, they'd discard it. It's not sharp enough. Composition's not quite right. But you know what? It doesn't really matter, does it? It's all about that smiley face. Okay, when we think about light and composition and movement, they really are the three things that you need to think about when you're taking a picture of anything. Light, composition, and movement. Doesn't matter whether it's a studio shot or a landscape or a wedding picture. If you get the light right and you get the composition right and you get the moment right, then it will be a killer picture. So here we have Dad and the bride walking down the aisle, and there's a nice pool of light that falls down in the middle of this church. And so replicating that, same bride, now with her husband, Dad's in the background there, you can just see him coming back up the aisle, just straight after, half an hour later or whatever. Same pool of light, same thing. So just kind of getting cohesion in things there. So here we have this beautiful bride who was waiting for her dad to come into the room for to take her to the ceremony. And I'm kind of backed onto the wall here. I'm waiting for him to come also. But this light's flowing and it's flooding in, and it's a nice opportunity to get a detail shot, what I would class as a detail shot. And the brides will spend a lot of money on their wedding dress, of course, and they want to see the details. Doesn't mean that it has to necessarily, or certainly not in my case, be kind of laid out, hung up on a table or a tree or whatever. But I will ensure that I get detailed shots of the wedding dress throughout the day in different circumstances, but totally candidly as well. You can do that very easily. This is a lovely picture of my friend Pete and Jeannie getting married, and this is during the signing of the register. All these little moments that are flooding around, buzzing around. It's this stuff, the stuff that's going on. Martin Parr would always say it's the extraordinary and the ordinary. They're the moments that you want to try and keep your eyes open to. In this case, we've got the eye contact again. We've got the lovely, beautiful smiles on the mother's face and the grandmother's face on the right-hand side, and then obviously the dad and the bride coming towards the groom, coming down the aisle, straight over the shoulder. Wonderful. Now, one thing that happens at every single wedding, regardless where it is the first time that they will clasp eyes on each other, if you like, connect eyes. And that's something that, again, us as an observer will give us, if we know that this is going to happen, we can look for it. Doesn't mean we'll always get it, but we can look for it. That very first moment. Quite often the groom will turn and look up the aisle, and there will be a glance from the bride. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they wait till right at the very end before they turn, and it's a really beautiful moment. Okay, so again, light is important here, and also context. So we have a little bit of the wedding dress hanging up, and obviously you can see the bride is sat in the bridal chair, and then fortuitously, actually, I'm not even sure if they're her wedding shoes or the mum's, but there are some shoes there. I'm not very good at wedding shoes, but it's a nice way of connecting a few things together, and broadening the viewpoint and seeing extra things that are happening, the extraordinary and the ordinary, as I say. Same wedding, bridal prep going on, as we can see. I'm not a huge fan of photos of people with the eye makeup going on when they're not doing it on the same side. So it would be better in terms of the image if the eye pencil, if that's what they're called, was going on the right hand side. However, it's not, and what we do have though is that lovely kind of layered story in the background. Eyeliner, thank you. Somebody's just told me eyeliner. There we go. It's been a long time since I've worn any of that. We have this layered story in the background, so keeping it wide, keeping your eyes open constantly is going to allow me to to really tell this story of the day. And sometimes people feel afraid of going wide, I find, when they're trying to shoot this stuff. And actually, sometimes wide is the only way. I shoot with an 18mm and a 56mm lens, and 18mm is beautiful for getting this stuff, and then I can flip to the 56 if I need to get some more close-up stuff. But this is a really lovely picture. We've got a lot of good stuff going on here. There's symmetry in the bridesmaid holding the glass up, and the groom, of course, and everybody else is just happy. It's just a really, really nice picture that could only really come about by having a wide angle lens available to me. Again, going back some years here, this is another picture that almost every time I see this and I share this, I see something different. Again, it's cropped, so there's elements on the edges that are missing. But this is this is an interesting picture. You kind of, your eyes gaze around it. We've got the venue in the background, which happened to be the family home, but it's still the wedding venue. And we've got we've got that little baby having a tantrum in the middle on the floor. We've got the little girl with a balloon. There's a lady there with a blow-up horse. We've got a guy sat on the fence at the back who's just by himself, not really doing much, wondering where all his friends are. And you've got all kinds of things going on here. My only regret with this picture was that in those days I was shooting with a 23mm lens, which in full frame equivalent is 35. 18mm would have given me even more, but I wasn't shooting with 18mm in those days. Stonehenge, another 5 a.m. wedding, yeah, so the venue, the details, the context are super important. I didn't just want to take a picture of Stonehenge; it's been photographed a bazillion times. So as we were, they take you up on a little bus, and as they were getting off to walk up to the stones for the ceremony, you can just about see the druids there in the foreground. I wanted to get this picture of them kind of go into their destiny, if you like, and their children were with them. The little boy, bless him, was dressed as Thor, yeah, it was a wonderful day, wonderful wedding. Unfortunately, the sun didn't come up. It was the day before the midsummer solstice, I think. The sun didn't really rise. Typical Britain. Here we have another lovely little picture, little bridesmaid. Probably spent the last 18 months getting super excited about this wedding day. Auntie whatever is getting married. I can't wait. I'm going to be the princess. And then she takes one look down the aisle and she's like, oh, I'm not really sure about this. And then we've got the grandmother there on the right hand side trying to coax her down, which I love it like that as well. Okay, so this picture is really one I love also. This is shot on the FUJIFILM X-70, which is a tiny little camera. Now, what happens if you shoot weddings, which many of you do, I'm sure, you'll probably come across the car drivers. They turn up and they say, do you want me to wind the window down and allow the bride and groom to have a glass of champagne and stare at you through the window? And I always say yes to that. I always say, yeah, that'd be lovely, thanks, go ahead. But I never take that picture of them staring through the window at me. What I do at that point is I move away, and then that brings everybody else in. Sometimes they'll look at me as if to say, are you not taking that picture? And maybe I'll go and hide behind a gravestone or something, but I allow everybody else to get involved. And when everybody else gets involved, it starts to unfold in front of you. So in this image, we've got obviously the bride and groom in the car. We've got both sets of mums. We've got dad, we've got best man, we've got both dads, in fact, we've got brother, everything, and it's a really nice kind of action picture, if you like, of something that perhaps would have been a little bit boring, if you ask me. Okay, so photography is easy, observing is the challenge. You'll take better pictures and photos and tell more remarkable stories by taking fewer photos and learning to see. This is something that I'm really passionate about this as an idea. We all go to weddings as photographers and we all worry that nothing's happening. Maybe nothing's happening. What should I do? I need to make it look like I've got a camera to my eye and I'm taking pictures of things that I know I'll never give to them. And that's just pointless. I've done it. I do it myself. I'm not. This isn't a kind of you shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. It's a problem. It's a problem we have, psychological problem. And your best bet, and something that I've learned over the years, is to put the camera down. Put the camera down. Use your ears and your eyes. Listen. I've even spent time recording the audio in particular rooms, and then going away to to the loo or something and listening back to the audio, and that will tell you so many things. You'll hear the chefs kind of shouting in the kitchen, you'll hear door slamming, you'll hear kids crying in different rooms or having fun, or laughter in corners, all those things that perhaps if you're too busy thinking I've got to take pictures, you'll miss. So slow down, relax, and look around the periphery of everything. And every wedding, regardless how small or perceivably not much happening, there's stuff going on. So here, for example, again, another image from several years ago, but that moment when the bride and groom, they sit down, the registrar tells them to sit down, and they interlink those things. They all do it. Everybody does it. I see it every single Saturday. I see this. Nobody else sees it, and the bride and groom will forget about it. but that's happening. You know, it's that little reassurance to each other that, you know, they're both there, they both turned up, they're both, you know, about to have a beautiful day together and hopefully an incredible rest of life. And so capturing those things, knowing they're going to happen, looking for them, and then being able to present those images to the client's really important. Another one, kind of about interaction between people. Really nice picture. Okay, first dance. So we all obviously shoot the first dance generally, but once you've got the first dance picture, think about exploring the scene. Again, think about what's going on beyond it. You probably want to include the first dance as part of a frame like this in terms of context. But we've got, again, so much stuff going on here. We've got super proud dad. We've got people dressed in weird and wonderful, beautiful clothes. We've got a 7-foot man in the background. We've got, you know, there's a lady right in the middle who's staring directly at me and making a face at me. We all kinds of stuff going on here. But if I was busy concentrating just on the first dance and getting 20, 30 pictures, of which I might only give them one, then, you know, I'm not seeing this stuff. Remember, observing. Similar thing here, you know, we're on the periphery of bridal prep. Everything is going on. During a ceremony, beautiful little bridesmaids. With kids, typically they're the only ones that I'm happy for. I'm really happy when they look directly at the camera, usually, because they have that sense of awe and wonder rather than wondering about what they're going to look like on Instagram. You know, I think that's a really nice picture. This image makes me smile as well. Again, another nervous bridesmaid perhaps looking back for her mum, thinking, oh, I'm not sure about this. We've got a little lad who's given the other bridesmaid a little bit of a nudge. Go on, you go first. Go on. I told you, I'm going to go last. You go first. And it's all a little bit of a chaotic scene there. But shooting it from behind, I'm thinking about the light. And the light is important, you see. From the other side, we don't have any lights on these kids, or not much natural light falling on them. And of course, there's a lot of serendipity in this. There's a lot of luck. That happens with the moment. You can't control the moment. You can only control your positioning, your understanding of the light, and your composition. Everything else, these are the actors on the stage. You know, you have to rely on them to do their things. And she just glances back, and there we are. It's a, you know, it's a nice picture. It's a really nice black and white image there. Stuff like this as well. You know, padding around in the venue just before the wedding, looking out for all of these kind of details. The stuff that they won't see. They simply won't see this. You know, the organizers are all doing all of this. There's a little bit of kind of humor in it, but also there's very much a sense of reality in this. Yep, this kind of thing as well. You know, we're looking for that people being people, you know, over the shoulder, and a little snap of the speech that he's about to give, a little sneak peek of his awful sense of humor. Okay, light. I've alluded to this a few times as we go through. Now, light is, when I first started, light was my enemy, but light is always our friend. Natural light, available light I'm referring to here. Of course, you may use flash, and by all means do that and enjoy that. And you can control it, of course. But for me, I'm really looking for opportunities to make seemingly normal images more powerful by the use of light. So in this case, we have you know, the bride sat in front of a window and she's having the hairspray done, which I'm highly allergic to, which drives me nuts every wedding. But you know, by focusing on her, but then taking my meter reading from a very much a lighter point of the frame, I can make something relatively artistic out of something that's a pretty regular standard frame. And so, you know, being able to see this is important. Same thing here. And we will, one of the tips towards the end when we get to the, you know, the kind of technical element, if you like, is this idea of using spot metering. And Sasko has just asked, you know, can you tell us about your camera settings? And we will get to that. But ultimately, the most important thing and the best thing that I can advise you is to understand spot metering in your camera if you're not shooting fully manually. Allow the camera to take some element of control over the exposure. And you'll be able to utilize that light really powerfully. Similar thing here. We have this one from, again, very, very long time ago, a beautiful picture. Okay, this is a more recent one, just before Christmas also. maybe September time. Again, this is another example of the details of the dress, you know. So the light is lovely, falling lovely on the wedding dress. Using that spot metering mode to make the most of the details with the light on it. We get that shot that you know, the bride's actually said to me, she really loves that picture. And that to me is more important than perhaps having it in a very formal, you know, hanging on the wardrobe door or something. Okay, back in that same wedding, that light, we're talking about light waiting for the dad. Remember, I was behind her at one point, and now we're literally waiting for him to walk through that door. The wedding planner has just gone to get him. Another opportunity to see something in the mirror and take the shots. And yeah, of course, you know, what we have here is the makeup artists have left their hair things, whatever they are. There's a Marks and Spencer's bag down there, all kinds of stuff. But that is real. That's what's there. You know, if I decide to go and move all of that stuff, unplug those plugs, move the bag and everything, then the moment's gone, totally gone. Back on the dance floor, available light again. So, you know, usually I get asked that a lot about, you know, dance floor and the light and all of that kind of stuff. And yes, I have my little LED light for when I need it. But in most cases, you know, the light source is set up. You know, the DJs will either have some funky lighting, or you know, there's stuff going on in the roof. So make the most of it. Do what you need to do. In this case, I'm desperately trying to get the singer and the guitarist in the frame at the same time as the bride and groom, who are literally just finishing their first dance, and they said, you know, everybody else come onto the dance floor. And that's the point where you're worrying that you haven't got what you need from the first dance. You'll be concentrating too much on the other people, but then it comes together. Okay, so storytelling. This is the way that you can tell a story at anything. It doesn't have to be a wedding, it could be the story of your day. 5 W's. Again, I have this written on the inside of my camera bag. Who, why, what, where, and when. If you're really struggling, thinking, how can I go beyond making snapshots to making a story, then think about those 5 W's. Who's there? Why are they there? What are they doing? Where are they? When are they? You know, so you're thinking about the weather, the environment, the time, the venue, the road signs, everything that connects the dots between like bridal prep to the venue. For example, if the bridal prep is going on in somebody's house or parents' house, I'll invariably stop and get a shot of the road sign, you know, the street sign outside, the door, the front door, the cars outside, all of these things that will remind them of the place that they grew up generally. Really important, and you know, you will be thanked for that kind of thought process. Okay, what can we learn from Tony Ray Jones? And Tony Ray Jones is he's dead, unfortunately, but when he died, they found these notes in his camera bag. And what you'll see is that a lot of the stuff we've talked about in this session is very similar to what Tony Ray Jones was constantly telling himself. You can read it there: be more assertive, get more involved, stay with the subject, take simpler pictures, watch the background, beware of composition, don't take boring pictures, don't overshoot, getting closer. So even the great Tony Ray Jones wrote notes to himself and stuck him in his camera bag. And that's a really good thing, really good tip, I think. All right, so I'm going to show you my very favorite, my most favoritist ever wedding photo. I had taken a very long time ago. This was with the FUJIFILM X Pro 1 on a 60mm macro lens, because that's pretty much all I had in those days. And this is a wedding in I can't even remember where it was, but it was a beautiful day. And the reason why I love this picture so much is because this is what it's all about, isn't it? Isn't this what we want to be all like? You know, when it's, you know, we're kind of in the limelight, or the twilight, if you like. You know, it's grainy, it's a little bit dark in places. We've got lots of hot spots. We've got like exit signs, things like that. But really, that's an image that is all about the emotion between two people. And you know, I really love that picture, and it is still my favorite picture ever. Okay, so a few tips for a successful business. Of course, the most important thing is you know, is basically hard work. There's no shortcuts, but minimal gear really helps. So for me, touching on what I shoot with, I moved from a DSLR system back in 2011 or 12, that period of time. And it was the brilliant camera system. You know, you'll never hear me kind of knocking different camera systems. And I went to a smaller mirrorless system, just so happened to be Fujifilm. But right now, of course, you've got Sony, Panasonic, Canon, Nikon. They all offer smaller mirrorless cameras. But it really, really helps. So I shoot with two relatively small cameras, an X Pro 3 and an X-T4, an 18mm f1.4 and a 56mm 1.2 lens. Literally 100% of my shots are taken on those two lenses, 99% I should say. The X70, X100V are in my pocket, in my jacket pocket, just in case something happens to the other two generally. Sometimes the X70 is pretty cool because it's a little bit wider and you can lift it above your head and things like that. But yes, travel light, really try and not get bogged down in thinking I must have a length of lens to cover all all scenarios, because you probably don't. The less gear you have, the less equipment, then the more enjoyable the day will be for a start, and the more cohesive type images you're going to get throughout your career. Number two, seeing in black and white. Now this is really, 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 really powerful. Couple of things to say about this. You will only be able to do this if you are using a mirrorless camera and you have a electronic viewfinder. Most mirrorless cameras have electronic viewfinders. Some of them have both optical and electronic. If you switch your display to black and white in the camera, you will then be seeing in black and white. Now, one thing to be super, super careful of, if you're just shooting JPEG, then your images will all be in black and white. Okay, don't blame me. But if you're shooting RAW plus JPEG, or you're just shooting RAW, then your RAW images, of course, will always be in color. Unless you're using a monochrome only sensor. So being able to see in black and white, all of those images we talked about in the light section, I'm seeing those images in the camera. Yes, there's editing in terms of maybe darkening down corners and various things like that, but ultimately I can meter and expose directly in the camera for the light and the shadow, and it will definitely make your black and white images specifically better, but also I think you'll find your color images as well, because you'll be able to get a better, stronger exposure. Okay, next up is remember the social in social media. Social media is, a much maligned marketing practice, and it is a marketing practice, but also, just remember to be social. Everything, I'm forever telling my kids that no matter, every single thing that goes public on the internet will be there forever. So remember it. So if you're on Twitter, kind of slagging off football team or politician or whatever, then it's likely to come back to haunt you at some point. But more importantly, if you think about Instagram, we had a very long conversation on a podcast that I run recently about, how Instagram is not good because nobody sees the pictures anymore. It's all about reels and various things like that. And it's not. I was going through my stats the other day, and out of my last 15 bookings over the however many last months have been, 6 of them were Instagram leads and came from Instagram. And I think the most important thing to remember with Instagram is, play by the rules. I see a lot of people who put like 20 hashtags at the bottom of a post, or they put ... and all the hashtags are at the bottom, or they put the hashtags in in another comment, or they go around and comment on loads of other posts because they then think that will drive them back there. And it won't. It really won't. It's people who write the code for Instagram are a lot cleverer than all of us. And if they see ... because you're trying to hide the hashtags, they're just going to laugh at you at best, and maybe give you a bit of a kick at the butt in terms of the rankings at worst. So just do it. Honestly, I typically will do 3 or 4 hashtags. I'll write a nice piece of text with every image. I don't post that regularly. And I always reply to the comments if they're, if they demand a reply, and it works. It really does work. But it's important to remember that it is social media. It's not guerrilla marketing media. Back button focusing and spot metering. We did touch on this, and a couple of questions have come up that I've seen about technique. Now, back button focusing and spot metering is a technique where you will use the AFL button on the back of your camera to lock the focus. All cameras will have that. Spot metering, all of your cameras will also have a metering mode, average, center weighted, all of that kind of stuff. Spot metering is where it's going to build the exposure based on a very small element of the frame, wherever you're kind of hovering your camera, if you like. Metering will only kick in if you're shooting in one or more of the auto modes, so either aperture priority, shutter priority, auto ISO, or 2 or 3 of those. If you're shooting in fully manual mode, you are the meter. But being able to lock the focus in one place, just twist the camera slightly and meter from somewhere else, and if you're looking at your image in black and white, it's going to open up a whole new world to you. If you haven't done that before, what I suggest you do is practice, even at home. You know, put your camera into back button focusing mode, however your camera demands that. Pop it into spot metering mode. Just play around in the living room. Look at, watch what happens when you move the camera over the TV screen, for example, and then over to a wall, and look at how you can lock the focus on maybe the corner of the TV screen and get the meter reading from somewhere else, and you'll get images that will, will be far more powerful, and it's really quick to do. Cohesive look and editing style. So we're going to do a little bit of editing now. Hopefully we've got a bit of time. It's important to keep that very, very simple. Edit everything to look the same. And that will help you also if you're using just 2 lenses or 2 focal lengths. But the editing is really important. Okay, so before I bump into Lightroom, this is obviously this is a BenQ webinar, and you are all entitled and welcome to go to cameracenteruk.com, get 5% off BenQ SW monitors when using the code BenQ5. Offer is valid until the 4th of April, and there you go. So I am using BenQ 32-inch monitor and the Calibrate Color Checker Display Pro, which you can see just about seeing that screen there, for color calibration, which is really critical. And one of the things that I get asked a lot is, although you do a lot of black and white work, Kev, is color calibration still important? And yeah, it's probably even more important, because I have seen awful casts on my own images if I've edited on monitors that are not color calibrated. So very, very important if you're a professional photographer, and of course important to have a decent screen for editing on. Okay, so I'm going to jump into Lightroom, and I'm going to show you a very quick way of kind of doing some editing. And there's a link there to the smart collections that I'm about to show you. They're totally free on the website. So now you might have to tell me whether you can see Lightroom or not when this comes up, whether I need to reshare. Alexandra, can you tell me if you can see Lightroom? Can somebody tell me if you can see Lightroom? Yeah. Yes. Whoa, there we go. Right, cool. All right, so I've just got a handful of images from the wedding that you've seen. Now these smart collections here, most people, if you use Lightroom, will know about smart collections. I have these here. They're the standard ones, but you can build your own smart collections. Really very easy to do. And if you use a workflow method of editing built into smart collections, you can get through things very quickly. Like I said, you can go to my website and download these totally for free. And essentially, because we're strapped for time, I'm going to show you roughly what I would do. This would probably be nearer 400 pictures, of course, for a whole wedding, rather than the 15 or so I've got here. But I would come in, the first thing, and critically the most important thing for all of the images, is to get the exposure correct and the white balance. Even if they're going to be black and white images, you want to be doing your exposure, get your exposure right, sort your white balance out, however that's going to be. Get those things done first of all, even for black and white. Color corrected monitor, white balanced, really, really important. So we'll do that for each of the images, however many we have. I'm not going to do it for all of them, of course, and you just go through and do that. Now, where the smart collections come in really useful is this editing element of it here. So we have numbers. So numbers on the keyboard. I will go through and I will decide, first of all, which ones I'm going to edit for color and which ones I'm going to edit for black and white. So I'll simply press 3 on my keyboard for color, and then 4 on my keyboard for black and white. So obviously, you take more care about this when you're doing it. So as you can see here, I can now kind of go for coffee or whatever, and I've decided already which images are going to be color, which images are going to be black and white. I can then come back the next day or later, or just get straight on with it. click on the smart collection that's relevant, and you can do one of two things here. Obviously, again, remember you are going to have your images all exposure corrected. You can apply a preset, whichever preset you have, a standard Lightroom one or a third-party one or your own one. And effectively, that's your step. Your main build that preset, and I'm going to very quickly show you a black and white preset for you in a second. Apply that there, and do the same thing then for these ones. So, for the sake of argument, I am just very simply going to go to this one, standard color. Anyone really? Okay, and then effectively I would then go through and just mark them again, eyeball each one, make sure that they're dodged and burned correctly and all that kind of stuff, and then mark them as number 1 or number 2, depending on whether they're black and white color, and then they're done, they're edited. And then that smart collection set will help you go right the way through that. So what we'll do first though, or finally I should say, is I'll show you how I would build a basic black and white preset in Lightroom. The same principle will apply for Capture One and various other things. So there's lots of ways in Lightroom you can do this. You can just click black and white, you can drop the saturation, all of those various things are okay. What I prefer to do is go to the profiles, and I'm not going to pick one of the black and white camera profiles. Where are they? They're down the bottom. So I'm looking for camera specific. Here we go, camera matching. So whatever your camera you've chosen will have your camera matching profiles in here. I'm not going to choose a black and white one. I'm actually going to use a punchy color one. Okay, so in this case, we'll go for classic chrome. All right, so I've applied a classic chrome filter, which is in the Fujifilm cameras. Next thing I'll do is drop the saturation. Okay, so we've got classic chrome, saturation taken away. And then your friend at all times is this wonderful tone curve, simple S curve, somewhere like that. Okay, get that right. And then to give it the little bit of drama that it probably deserves, a bit of clarity. Okay, and then you'll finish the image off as you so wish. So things like shadows, highlights, exposure, all of that shouldn't be in a preset really. That should be done on an individual basis. So I might bring that up there. And there we go, we're good to go. Right, okay, I know I really appreciate I went a little bit over, so I'm going to put my face back on, get ready, cover your eyes, and there we go. I know we have to do the questions. If you're still hanging around, I'm really sorry. Okay, so let me see what we had. Let's see. A question from Adrian. Hi Kevin, how do you manage the issue of group shots when meeting prospective clients, please? Well, that's all about branding, really. So ultimately, the clients that come to me realize that that's not my focus. I'd say 60% of my clients still have 2 or 3 group shots, but that's it. Literally, the rest have none, and the others maybe have 2 or 3. But it really is a branding thing. Don't, just don't show stuff on your website that you don't want to shoot. Okay, simple as that. And make sure your branding and your marketing message is strong. And there are, for every person that wants 25 group shots out there, clients, there's a client that wants 0 group shots. You have to align yourself with those people. Daniel asked, do we ever use flash? And we answered that, no. So I use a little LED light. Question from Jay, are you zone focusing? Sometimes, very good question actually. So zone focusing is a technique where you are setting a distance in manual focus mode, maybe 2 meters in front of you to 5 meters. I will sometimes do that if I'm in a very, very busy environment, so a very busy drinks reception or something where there's a lot of people going on and it's very hard to kind of tell a story as such. So I might zone focus, put the camera just around chest level and see what I can get. But typically I'm using back button focusing, locking my focus. I'm always using that and then shooting that way. Okay, we have Martin says, if you think of yourself as a guest, does that mean you chat to the bride and groom as a guest? Would you try more to fade into the background? No, of course I chat to them. I don't go up to them and ask them, how their holidays were and all that kind of stuff. But of course I'll chat, and I'll chat to the other guests and everything like that. But it's not, when I say think of yourself as a guest, I mean try and get guest eye images, dress like a guest, for example. Try not to go dressed as a ninja. And if it's a black tie wedding, I'll go in a black tie. If it's fancy dress, I did once go to a wedding dressed as a crocodile, then I'll do that. But yeah, I mean, I'm there to do a job, and it's not a case of, we're not invisible people. We can't be invisible. So you can't just kind of hide on the sidelines, because actually the more that you don't interact with people, and that might just simply be a smile, or sometimes you hold the door open for people and say, I hope you have a nice day, all that kind of stuff. Then that's the interaction, isn't it? Okay, are you using RAW files and editing them, or JPEGs, RAW files, the Fujifilm equivalent RAW files? These days I shoot JPEG plus RAW, and mostly I'll edit from the RAW files with the presets. But up until probably the X Pro 3 came along, then I was shooting and editing a lot from JPEG. Really doesn't matter. I mean, I've found that I've managed to get with RAW files really nice set of presets that work for me. So I'm using those for editing at the moment. But ultimately, it doesn't matter, does it? Because they all go out as JPEGs at the end. And if you can get from the JPEGs what you want and what your clients want, then everybody's happy. Okay. Do you always use primes, says Martin? Yes, always use primes. I never use zooms at weddings ever. Doesn't mean you can't, I just don't. A couple of people have pointed out that I spelled Kappa wrong on the Robert Kappa quote. Go. I'll fix that. I think that might be it. Hang on. Nick says, how did you get your foot in the door to your first wedding? Or how did you get your foot in the door to the first wedding? So I basically did some second shooting for a kind photographer, helped me out, put a website together, and bearing in mind this was I don't know, 14 years ago, and websites were my background. I did have a very lucky break in that respect. But yes, you need to get your foot in the door, of course. Which comes first, the chicken or the eggs scenario? Jonathan, any tips for super dark venues without not much natural light at all? Yeah, spot metering. If it's light enough for people to see, it's light enough for you to take pictures in. However, you are going to have to work harder for it. Think about where those lights are coming from. Move yourself around. Think about where the source of light. Ultimately, don't be afraid. If you want to use flash or LEDs or whatever, use them if you really need to. But I'm a strong believer that if it's light enough for people to see, then you want to be giving them that ambience. These days, modern cameras these days, the ISO levels are insane, so you can clean up a lot of things. Tamara says, how long do you usually stay at a wedding if it lasts all night after 2 a.m.? 2 a.m. This is Britain, don't you know? Everybody goes home at 11 o'clock. Carriages. Typical coverage, probably I'm usually there around about 45 minutes for bridal prep. And obviously it depends on if the ceremony is in the same place as where the bridal prep is getting ready. And normally it depends. I have different coverages, so people can pay for midnight or last dance coverage. I'd say probably 1 in every 10 clients book that. Most people go for first dance, plus I usually hang around for an hour after the first dance. So let's just say it's a typical 2 o'clock wedding. Bridal prep might be midday. First dance might be at 8 o'clock, and I'll probably be leaving about 9. There we go, 9-10 hours. Something like that. Miguel says, how do you figure out the relationship between the numerous guests? I can imagine you don't want to take a nice picture of 2 people that hate each other, right? Yeah, literally doesn't bother me. If they wanted to invite people who hated each other to the wedding, that's their choice. If they happen to be looking at each other and liking each other there, then I'll take a picture of it. But yeah, I don't worry. Yeah, it's obvious who's mum and dad and all that kind of stuff. You get a good idea of who's sat at the front of the ceremony, all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm not responsible for the guest list. Luigi says, do you let the spouses to express their preferences for black and white or color, or is that all your choice? No, it's my choice, but ultimately, so if you look on my website and stuff, you'll see that my blog and my albums and everything are delivered in this mechanism called islands of color. So if Bridal Prep is, all of Bridal Prep will either be in black and white or color. All of the outside stuff will either be in black and white or color. All of the inside or the ceremony will be either black and white or color, etc. And yeah, you can deal with it as you so wish. I also allow people to pay for having images in all color and all black and white. So that does it. Ultimately, though, key takeaway: you must make sure you're doing wedding photography on the level where you enjoy it, and really try and understand the fact that you are there to be an observer. You need to understand how to take photos, obviously, but you're an observer. Tell a story, and hopefully everything will be good. Make sure you've got calibrated BenQ monitors as well. I think that's it. Thank you very much. I think it's up to me to just close the session down, or maybe Alexandra will do it. I'm not sure. There we go. That's it. We're done. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Bye.